Okay, everyone, the Don Lemon criminal case is moving forward. Now, in a new filing this week, the government moved to dismiss one of the defendants from the case, Heather Denai Lewis. Now, she wasn't one of the standout defendants. Now, maybe she's pictured there behind Don Lemon. Now, she's mentioned 5 times in the superseding indictment as one defendant in a big group that met in the parking lot of Cub Foods in Minneapolis and received instruction from the leaders of the conspiracy. Once they gained entry into the church, she stood with the big group chanting slogans like "Ice out," "Hands up," "Don't shoot," etc., and made hostile and aggressive gestures along with the others. Now, I don't know why she was dismissed from the case. Maybe it was mistaken identity and she wasn't a co-conspirator? Now, here they are at Cub Foods. Don Lemon, by the end of his initial commentary here, now this is just after he had landed in Minneapolis. Now, by the end of his speech here, he sounds like a protester, not just a journalist. Let's watch.
These are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, I can't tell you where they're going and where we're gathered right now.
He talked about we are doing this operation, and maybe he got caught up because the group has that type of energy. But a journalist should have ethics and boundaries. Now let's watch this next clip.
We have nothing to lose but our chains! We have nothing to lose but our chains! We have nothing to lose but our chains! Now remember to stay bumper to bumper. Yep. Make sure everybody gets through the light.
Okay, the camera did a 360 there. Now, was Heather Denai Lewis in that group? Maybe not. Maybe they charged the wrong person. That would be my guess. Now, the U.S. attorney mentioned in a different filing this week that the government plans to indict an additional co-conspirator. Now, maybe her name will turn out to be Heather Denise Lewis, something like that. Now, incidentally, speaking of the camera doing a 360, Don Lemon's camera guy, Michael Walker Beute, is one of the newly indicted co-conspirators. Now, he has his own lawyer. He's not represented by Don Lemon's attorneys, but it seems Michael Walker Beute is asserting the "I'm just a journalist" defense along with Lemon and Georgia Fort because they filed in opposition together, the 3 of them, Lemon, Georgia Fort, and Michael Walker Beute. It's in opposition to the government's motion for an extension of time to make initial disclosures. So this brings us back to the issue of Don Lemon's cell phone and every conspirator's cell phone, which were all seized. Now, the government hasn't disclosed what they found on the cell phones yet. The government hasn't produced any discovery materials at all yet because the new defendants were added to the case and the U.S. attorney's workload increased exponentially. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses for the prosecution, but civil rights cases are fact-intensive. Now, this case is about the violation of churchgoers' civil rights, their freedom to worship. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division is leading the prosecution. Now, the case management in a civil rights case is very involved. You need a database. You need to track each piece of evidence, each statement, each fact, and link them all together. Just tracking it all is extremely time-consuming. Now, the government disclosed this week that it's still interviewing witnesses from the church. The defense was upset about that, saying, well, it seems that the government indicts first and investigates later. No, I don't think that that's an accurate characterization. The government is doing what we, the people, would want them to do, given that it's a civil rights case. And that's what the defense isn't taking into account. Civil rights cases are different in kind, okay? Not simple in terms of the evidence that will be presented. Social factors play a huge role. Now, the social context is key to civil rights cases, and that's often difficult for witnesses and even victims to talk about because people often don't take notice of the social context or they feel hopeless about it.
Look at this. I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
Now, we just witnessed there, it was difficult for the pastor to respond to Don Lemon, although he comported himself very well. But with this case, thankfully, we can see the context for ourselves. Now, it's all on video, and there was national outrage at the defendant's conduct and an outpouring of sympathy for the churchgoers. The conspirators, though, we can bet they don't see it that way. For example, Defendant William Kelly, a.k.a. Da Woke Farmer. Now, he's out there alleging they were let into the church voluntarily and were just there to worship. Blatantly false. Now, let me play the rest of this video clip from the Cub Foods parking lot.
Remember, if you have anything that is activist identifying, do not wear it in if you're going in to just sit down and be a part of the situation. You want us to spread out? Yeah, don't all sit together. But when y'all, if I wanted to say that, I would have. When we pull up, you'll know exactly what it is. So if you are a white ally, again, and you have anything activism identifying, do not go in with the first wave. You wait until you come in with us as people of color. Okay?
You guys. So they're getting the operation together again.
Okay, so on the video, they're conspiring to gain entry through deceit. And we saw Don Lemon there just at the end getting nervous because the conspiracy to gain entry through deceit was captured on the live stream. So that's another factor here. Lemon was live streaming, not just recording footage to be edited later. Now, if he had just been recording and not live streaming, we probably would never have seen that portion of the stream. So, in terms of the federal court, the magistrate judge just designated the case as complex, which adds 90 days to the speedy trial calendar. Now, the judge also extended the deadline for producing initial disclosures to April 24th. Now, at that point, we might learn what was on Don Lemon's cell phone and every conspirator's cell phone. Now, the judge just excluded about 2 months from the speedy trial calendar, and in mid-May, the court will issue a new schedule in the case. From my point of view, the judge just gave the government a huge win by excluding 2 months from the speedy trial calendar. Now, most of the defendants had made a big show of opposing any delays in the schedule. Now, earlier I showed the opposition filed by Lemon, Georgia Fort, and Michael Walker Beute. Now, some other defendants had even filed a declaration from one of their attorneys stating that she's worked on large document reviews with the same amount of material at issue in this case, and that the most that the government should need is 1 week. Now, here's her declaration. In my view, the declaration was counterproductive. It wasn't filed by Lemon and the other journalists. It was filed by Nakima Levy Armstrong and a huge number of the other defendants who joined her opposition. Now, the magistrate judge didn't think much of this declaration and completely ignored it, to his credit. Now, why was it counterproductive to file this declaration? I'll give you some time. Relevance. How is it relevant that this attorney declares that the cases that she's worked on with the same volume of material would take just 1 week to go through? Now, we're talking about this case, not the 10 cases that she said she's worked on. I mean, it's a hypothetical that she brings into a case with actual facts. So, not relevant. Now, maybe it was worth a try, hoping that the judge would be asleep at the wheel, but that did not happen. Now, there's no trial date as of yet. By mid-May, we'll have a much better idea of when the trial will take place. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.